What's happening, guys? My name is Alsruh, and I'm a strongman. I know many of you watching this probably aren't strongman. Some of you probably are, but I know a lot of you out there are at least involved in lifting or powerlifting, and this event in particular is going to help you out in just about everything. So today we're going to talk about stones. Now, when you think about strongman, that's exactly what you think about. Whenever I tell someone that I compete in strongman and they look at me like I have two heads, I say, you know, the guys that like pick up the big stones, and then everyone knows what I'm talking about, right? However, it's such a quintessential event, and yet so many people have never gotten a chance to do it or touch them, and it actually can help you a lot with your lifting, even if you are a powerlifter, because you're going to be working your upper back, your traps, your crush strength, your squeeze. You're going to learn how to use your lats in a completely different way, which is going to help you keep that bar tighter to you on your deadlift and just stay locked in more in general on your squats. It'll help, all right? And plus, it's always fun to train something new and just do something different. We have a couple different things here. First off, traditionally, stones are made of concrete, all right? So this is a typical concrete stone here. Everyone asks if there's rebar or anything in them. There's absolutely not. It is literally just concrete, all right? Sometimes you can stick weights on them and lead to make them more heavy. But then a guy named Mike Bardos came up with an idea to make a stone of steel, which is basically just two spheres together here, and you can plate load it inside, all right? So both of these are traditionally what you're going to find at any type of strongman gym. Some powerlifting gyms, some CrossFit gyms will have these. However, I know a lot of you at commercial gyms or at your home gym are not going to be taking part in anything like this, but you might have access to a big, heavy slam ball or potentially a heavy packed sandbag. So that will work just as well. The only thing that I will say is that if you do have a sandbag, try to keep it as tightly packed as possible so that it kind of mimics a stone. If you kind of have like a bag of sand, like mashed potatoes in a trash bag type of sandbag, and it's kind of flopping all over, this isn't going to work nearly as well. But if it is tightly packed or you do have a big, heavy type of D-ball, this will work, all right? First off, first thing we're going to talk about is where to line up on it, because obviously whenever you go to pick something up, in real life, you don't do it with your legs, right? Everyone says pick up with your legs, but you don't. You pick up with your back. If you walk up to it and naturally you want to pick it up out in front of you, kind of like this, but that's not really going to work because it's so far off the middle of your foot and so far away from your spine, things are super, super heavy. It'd be the same thing as if I tried to pick up a person out here as opposed to like squeezing them to me and picking up, right? Same exact thing. So when you line up on a smaller stone, you're just going to want to line up your feet basically with the hemisphere. Like if you think about the equator kind of running along this, you kind of want to keep everything as much lined up with the middle of your body as you can. Now, as the stones get bigger, you're not going to be able to do that because you just biomechanically can't, and it's going to be out in front of you more. But for right now, to keep it simple, just line up the equator with the middle of your foot, and then you're going to take your hands, and people do different things here, right? Number one, you're going to crush in, you're going to squeeze hard as you possibly can, so you're going to want to dig them down underneath as much as possible. Some people like to stick their hands kind of like the Spock kind of thing, so they can get deeper underneath, and some people will actually roll the stone literally on top of their fingers and then go from there. That sucks. That hurts so terribly bad, but I will say it does absolutely help. But from here, all I'm going to do is take my hands, dig them right underneath. Now remember that equator line that I was talking about? Basic idea here is that you want to stick kind of your middle finger to the middle seam of your hand right along that line. Because if you're too far forward, you're dealing with a sphere. So if you're too far forward, it's going to roll backwards. If you're too far back, it's going to roll forwards. So again, middle of your foot, middle of the sphere, middle of your hand, all go together, dig as deep as possible. From here, you're going to get a big belly breath, and you're basically going to do an RDL, all right? You can't push the ground here with it, or you can't really pick it up with your legs as much. You're still going to try to push the world away the same way that you would Q in a deadlift, but you're going to have to hinge a little bit differently because of being so far out in front of you. Big belly breath, brace down just like normal, push the world away. As it comes up, I'm going to move my feet inward. So here, as I'm coming up and it starts to clear my knees, I bring my legs in, all right? From here, I can sit down because I have biomechanical strength kind of just supporting this, okay? I can sit here all day as long as I stay balanced. But I can adjust where this thing is going to go. If you guys have a sandbag, it's not going to be as big of a deal, but if it is a stone, you do not want to move this thing until you absolutely have it where you want it, or else it's going to move for you. Logically right here, everyone's thinking, I'm going to stick my hands underneath this thing because that's going to give me the most room to bring it up, right? Because that's how you're going to be able to support it. So you go, and the problem is your face gets in the way. You literally have no more real estate. You can't do it, right? Number two, you're going to hurt your bicep. Don't do that. Some people go around the middle of it, And that works pretty well for smaller stones, but as it gets bigger, again, your face gets in the way, all right? You can't really do it. And when you're doing this event, you're always either loading to a platform, over a bar, or up to your shoulder, okay? So it's always a high load. It's not like you're barely picking it up. Unless you're someone like Brian Shaw, who is like 9 foot tall, then you don't need to pick it up as high. Someone like me, I'm gonna be getting a big extension from it. So where I place this thing is gonna be very, very important, and where I put my arms is even more important. So when it's here on my lap, what I wanna do, as opposed to going underneath or even around the sides, is actually go over top. So I think of my arms almost like gorilla arms, right? Like I just drape them over top as far as I can, and then I crush it to my body. I'm literally trying to squeeze the life out of this thing, essentially row it, using my lats as hard as I possibly can and not letting this thing move. Now, where you place this thing on your body is going to depend, because if I'm here, even if I'm over top, if it's low on my belly, when I go to drive and pick this thing up, it's gonna slide, it's gonna slip underneath, right? So in order to change that, when you're here in this lap position and you can move the stone around, if you roll this thing further out on your knees, you can get higher on your chest. Ideally, you want to place this thing kind of like where like your Superman symbol would be, or like your Batman symbol, right? You want it up on top of that, so it kind of has a slope and some purchase where it's going to sit. So if I have it sitting here and I pick it up and it's deep, if I go to move again, it's going to slip under. So what I need to do is adjust it out a little bit, get my chest higher so my chin actually sits on it. Once my chin is sitting on it, then I drape over, raise my hips, big belly breath, and then I basically like kettlebell swing. I just take my hips from point A to point B as hard as I can, and that moves it vertically. So I go here, big belly breath, and it comes up, all right? Now, the whole idea here again is either I'm loading up to a platform, in like a strongman competition, typically you go to a platform, or they'll have a bar set up where you're going over top of a bar, or you can go to your shoulder. For everyone watching this video who is not part of the strongman community, or might just be doing this as part of like an assistance exercise for their back, or their traps, or their upper body, what I recommend that you do is go from here, get it high on your chest, and you can do a number of things. Number one, you can just do extensions, where you're going here, try to hold, come back down. Try to hold, come back down, okay? That's one option if you want to be more explosive with it. I will use this a lot before something like my squats or my deadlifts to kind of get my hips and kind of my posterior chain kind of being as snappy as possible. So I actually take something like this and throw it over my shoulder. This is really useful for something like a sandbag. So from here, once I get it where I want it, I get a big belly breath, I take it on my shoulder, and you want to let it go the other side. All right, now you're gonna find that if you're using something like a tightly packed sandbag or one of these D-balls, you can actually crush a little bit, all right? Which is highly, highly useful when it comes to actually moving something of weight. If you guys, literally, you might be able to do 200 pounds in a sandbag, no problem at all. But if you move to a 200-pound stone, you might not be able to get it all. And the reason why is because you don't have that crush strength, okay? Like I was talking about with your lats, being able to squeeze something in. Number one, with your pick, you're already squeezing like this. It's almost like, it's not really like a dumbbell fly, but you're using similar muscles. And then when you go to pick it up in your lap, once you're over top, this is all almost like a straight arm lat pull down, okay? But that type of crushing strength, it's so huge in type of contact sports, like combat sports, grappling, MMA, rugby, American football, where you actually have to wrap people up and hold them. This is absolutely amazing for that. Plus you guys see the posterior chain work, everything like that. The only thing I'll say is as it gets heavier, you're gonna have more and more trouble getting a hold of it. So if you are using regular stones, you're gonna move on to something like Tacky. Tacky is nothing more than tree sap. You guys probably don't have any here, but it literally is tree sap that just gets all over everything. You do not wanna use that on anything besides concrete stones. For something like this, you just really need to work on your grip. All right, and then the last thing I'll say is that as the circumference of the stone or even the sandbag gets bigger, things kind of change because the hinge changes. So this probably, if like looking at these, this probably is about a 115 to 125 pound stone. This stone's metal, that doesn't change. This, if this was actually concrete, would probably be about 225 to 250 pounds, okay? When you start getting up to bigger stones, like 400, 420, 500, 600 pound stones, talking about world record breaking stones, the human body loses the capability to actually hold on to it because of little T-Rex arms that we have. So really the diameter stone goes up to about 20 to 21, and some people will even push a 22-inch stone. But really that's talking world championship level. But at that level, probably when it gets to about 20 inches stone or larger, or even a really big sandbag, you're not gonna be able to pick it up over top because your legs aren't gonna be there. So all that I'll say is that you do need to start a little bit back further, and when you go to pick, you're gonna have to sit more into it. So big belly breath. As you're picking up, it's literally, you're going to have to essentially, in a deadlift where you would ramp or you would hitch, that's what you're doing with a big stone. So here, if you guys get to here and you can't get it, start rolling it in. Start using your arms to roll it in. Try not to pinch your knees together too much, because obviously that's going to be dangerous. But if you can get this up here and with bigger stones, you're going to have to roll them in, then get your legs under you, then get to lat position, get it where you want it, and then take off from there. But it should be a little bit before you get there. I would say a good place to start as far as weight would probably be around your body weight, would be for a good, strong individual. Taking your body weight, picking it up from the ground, carrying it, putting it over your shoulder is an impressive feat for an average individual. For strongman, that's a good starting point. So yeah, I would recommend doing these. If you want to start adding them in, maybe part of your assistance work or your accessory work on your deadlift day, could be a little bit on your squat day, but pretty much keep it in conditioning, extra stuff, or type of extensions and squeezes on like your deadlift day.